Big ticket items, major consequences, high stakes, narrow majorities. This is going to be a hell of a grind. That is the only way to describe it. We saw on opening day with the speaker's vote. We had 15 votes on for Speaker McCarthy's election. He got through it without help. You had a faction within the House think that they were playing with the same dynamics as 2 years ago, and Speaker Johnson had his card, which was the president-elect Donald Trump, saying that this is an imperative to elect the speaker. So we saw the dynamic shift and the power shift here in a significant way, that President Trump's power and popularity and the mechanics of good leadership in the House can lead to results. And so I think we're going to have I think you're going to get the big ticket items done. It's going to be the secondary issues that are going to be much, much harder. And we need to I think Republicans need to lower their expectations on being able to achieve that in a timely manner.
I'm struck by the singular experience that Mike Johnson is having right now. You're one of the only people in the world who knows what it's like to stand in that rostrum, look across the floor of the House of Representatives. We know that he's going to have an even smaller majority in this new Congress than he had before. But bring us back to that view. When you're in the rostrum and you're looking at that room in front of you and the Republican conference, we hear a lot about the five families. What did it look like to you? Did you see these factions spread out in front of you as you were trying to corral lawmakers?
I spent most of my career in the House focusing on the mechanics, the COO role, not the CEO role, not the chairman role, but the mechanics of the day-to-day and how do you deliver on this. So when I look out, I see the groups of people, how they're sitting, where they're sitting, their disposition, who are they talking to, who is the person who's not supposed to be in that row talking to somebody in that row. Why are these two people that I know hate each other, have personally told me they cannot stand each other, but they're laughing and hugging about something? That's probably not good, right? That's a dangerous thing. So when you look out at the mechanics of this, and what you saw from a Speaker Boehner and a Speaker McCarthy in particular is they knew the granular details of this stuff. And Speaker Ryan came in with a different view, and I would say that Speaker Johnson comes in with a different view. They're at the higher level of policy. The mechanics, they have not been steeped in. That's not their first order capacity. So they lead in a different way than those that understand the tactical day-to-day. And we're in an environment now where President Trump has this umbrella that enables policy to be made within those powers and within those contours if he is definitive and certain. We're in this situation now where, as a primary example, where if the president says he wants one reconciliation package, there'll be one reconciliation package. And if he says there are two, there will be two. And if he says maybe one, maybe two, you may get none. And so he has to be definitive in what he wants and his expectations, and then demand that congressional leaders perform to that. And uncertainty means nothing happens.
Okay, so when we look at, as Joe is alluding to, the many different factions here, the people you might find suspicious if they were sitting together, the Freedom Caucus, for example, which caused a lot of trouble for Speaker McCarthy. That's why you had to step in for a few weeks there to hold the gavel yourself. Are those the same people that you see as most likely to ultimately bow to what the former president, the president-elect, is going to want? Because they're the ones who are likely to push back on a debt ceiling increase, on the idea of tax cuts without at least somewhat offsetting spending cuts.
Well, they're the ones that are most outspoken, and they're currently getting the most attention. But you have those that are on the moderate end of the Republican Party that are not getting attention. And they're the ones that will have significant sway over the contours of legislation as well. It is not just you mentioned the five families, and it is to say that you can neatly divide this Republican conference into five factions. They're more than that. I mean, it's a myriad of challenges the speaker faces, and you have one-off challenging individuals that, because of personality, because of their lack of understanding how the place works, may be problems on a weekly basis here. So it is far more complicated than the Freedom Caucus, though the Freedom Caucus is currently shown with the 9 votes that they withheld to Speaker Johnson that they have the power to throw him out of the speakership. What they also submitted to is an understanding that President Trump would force them to submit. And so they gave that up on the first vote. They made their show, but they did not extract any additional pain or get anything in result for that, other than to show they do have the capacity to take the speaker out. So it's a complicated thing, complicated beast, but this is why this is why I love following this stuff. This is why, this is far more interesting than any other sporting competition.
Do you regret not being in there now?
There's a little FOMO, but it also is a little more liberating because I don't feel that weight and the pressure of that moment to perform. But it is absolutely fascinating. It's going to be a fascinating Congress to watch.
I can't imagine how you remember that period of time when you were holding the gavel. But I think the point that you're making here is that even after MAGA wins the election, House, Senate, White House, the power may in fact lie in the middle.
It does. And inevitably, outside of a reconciliation package, you need to have almost, with a reconciliation package, you'd have to have near unanimous Republican support.
Yeah.
That is complicated by
So why won't he
salt.
say what he wants? Mike Johnson's begging for it. Just give us direction. To your point.
That has always been the beg of President Trump from legislative leaders. That is the first term, and is now in his second term. This is part of how he operates. And when people seek clarity, he may withhold that. Yeah. That may be a purposeful act, and I think on the most part it is. And in other regards, it may be the fact that he doesn't see, or his advisors don't see, the need for him to step in yet.
He has obviously a long list of things he would like to see accomplished, that he would like to see the U.S. turn into, including something you're very familiar with as it pertains to crypto. He wants the U.S. to be now the Bitcoin capital of the world. You obviously worked very hard on crypto legislation when you were chair of House Financial Services. You had to do so through bipartisan negotiations. That may be less mandatory now, if you will. Now that it will be full Republican control, how do you see the nature of any kind of market structure legislation, for example, that's going to move forward from here changing? And how will it affect not just the incoming SEC chair, Paul Atkins, but whoever takes Ross Benham's spot at the CFTC?
Well, so let's step back. What we got with our market structure legislation called FIT 21, which was first of its kind on crypto, giving it a regulatory definition of what is a digital asset and a regulator, and actually two regulators, because we're America and we do things in a more complicated way. But FIT 21 was the result of bipartisan negotiations in the House of Representatives without the help of a Senate banking chair. Now we have Tim Scott as Senate banking chair. That is a world of difference from Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown, and a pro-administration. And I was working in an adversarial administration, highly adversarial administration. And yet I had 1/3 of the Democratic Party join me, including the number 2 and number 3 House Democrat, former Speaker Pelosi, significant members, Jim Himes of Connecticut, serious legislators across the left of center ideology, joined with House Republicans, with an administration that did not want them to do that.
Yeah.
So I think the opportunity for crypto legislating goes way up because the environment has shifted, and crypto has shown that they have capacity at the ballot box, and they're willing to help their friends and go after their enemies. That is real power in Washington. They've expressed it, and if they're here to stay and here to play, they can have massive results over this Congress and future Congresses.
Big change coming to the Fed. You going to get dinner with Michael Barr once he's on the loose?
No time will I have that. I think Michael Barr resigning as vice chair to the Fed is very good for our system of independent monetary policy and very good for the Federal Reserve. I think the likelihood that incoming President Trump would fire the head of regulation at the Fed it is, number one, warranted, and number two, likely to succeed in the courts. And so for Michael Barr to step aside is actually is a direct result of this election, number one, and number two, the direct result of his mismanagement of the new set of regulations and bank capital standards that he couldn't even see through before the election. So I think this is a welcome and good thing for the American economy, a welcome and a good thing for financial stability and banking in the United States, and very good for our global leadership as well.